John Featherstone. Welcome to Zebra Spotlight.
Don, thanks for having me. It's great to join you.
Now, John, just to let the audience know who you are and what you do, and clearly there's a clue on your background. So away you go.
So my name's John Featherstone, as you said, and really, Atif, what we do is, at our core, we help people tell stories. Whether it is a Fortune 500 company, whether it's a concert performer, whether it's a hospitality location, whatever it is in all the diverse fields we work in, at our core, we're helping tell stories, create unique experiences, and deliver to people what we call an emotional souvenir. You do the same thing with your work at Zebra. You want people to have a unique and distinct experience when they come to you for their home solutions. We do the same kind of thing when people come to a concert or come to a restaurant or a theme park or a museum. So I just happen to use light and media as my modes for telling stories. You use bespoke home audio and cinema as you tell people stories. Some people use words, some people use music. We're all storytellers.
Fantastic. What a great summary and introduction. And in terms of telling stories, I mean, you and your company and your partner have delivered on some of the biggest shows on earth. Could you just share with the audience some of the biggest things and some of your most favorite productions you've worked on over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have been really incredibly fortunate, and we've worked on everything from helping Richard Branson and the Virgin Group launch Virgin Galactic 15 years ago, all the way through the arc of that long journey they've been on, Atif, to successful commercial spaceflight. We've had a long history with corporations ranging from Apple to Nintendo to Cisco to Mercedes-Benz, helping them tell a distinctive story in their live events. A lot of museum projects, everything from fabulous Museum of Biodiversity in Panama City in partnership with the renowned architect Frank Gehry, to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, to actually something that's opening in London very soon, which is a celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Walt Disney Company. And then architectural experiences ranging from a lot of theme park work for clients, including Universal Studios, to interesting, distinctive dining experiences throughout the world. And what we try to do is bring the best of all of those experiences together, Atif. Every museum these days wants a little bit of the excitement of a theme park. Every theme park wants to feel a little bit like it's got a frisson of energy of a rock show. Every rock show wants to pull the best techniques from the theme park. So all of these things are cross-pollinating. So what we feel is in the middle of this are really fortunate consumers who are seeing all of these different markets, which used to be, okay, here's the museum market with a very kind of pedestrian production value, and then here are theme parks with a ton of money and sophistication, and here are concerts with their own thing. All of these are merging, because I'm sure it's the same for you and your friends and family. When you go out for an evening, you don't think about how the event is created. You're just looking for a remarkable experience. Mm-hmm. So what we try to do is pull all these best threads from all of these diverse markets together for these kind of projects that we're fortunate enough to work on, including the one that sort of brought you and I together, which is working with Hans Zimmer on Hans Zimmer Live. And one of the favorite things I've done recently is a series of shows in Dubai with Hans. Hans was immediately smitten with the future potential, with the intersection of future potential and deep history of the city of Dubai, and working in Dubai on a series of concerts there that wove together the story of Dubai with Hans's music. And to anybody that's listened to Hans's music, he welcomes all kinds of influences into his music. So that was really great working on those projects in Dubai. And there's a little surprise for the fans of Hans Zimmer that's going to come out of those ventures in Dubai that I can't talk about yet, but there's something to really look forward to.
Incredible. Well, we'll see whether we can entice you to reveal a little bit of that secret in due course. I mean, what an incredible array of things that Lightswitch is involved in. And certainly it's the immersion that the audience, we don't know what to expect until we turn up, and then we just hit with this audio-visual extravaganza. And now you can see the theme running, that lighting and the drama, the intensity, the interplay of that with the audio aspect, how important it is and how it enhances our experiences. Now, with that, how did you get into this career in the first place? What was your, what was an academic route, training, meeting the right people at the right time? Tell us your story.
Well, there's that famous quote that when opportunity comes knocking, answer in sophistication. And here are concerts. Fortunately, I'm a much better lighting designer than I ever was a drummer. And I was playing drums in garage bands. That's going to come out of those ventures in Dubai that I can't talk about yet, but there's something to really look forward to.
Incredible. Well, we'll see whether we can entice you to reveal a little bit about.
Ergo, he must be a better drummer. So sort of head hung low, tail between legs, I kind of shuffled off. And I'd always had an interest in theatre and theatrical production. My aunt, who we lost, unfortunately, a few years ago, Ruth, who was a big light in my life, she was the wardrobe mistress at an English opera company called Glyndebourne. So there were these two kind of parallel worlds: the world of music, which I was interested in, the world of theatre, which I was interested in, and then a third world, which was from my maternal grandfather, who was an architect. So an interest in architecture, and I hadn't really connected these dots. This is further sort of the pulling together of threads from my dad's father, my paternal grandfather, who was an electrician. So there's all of these kind of tendrils making their way together. So I get kicked out of the bands, I find something else to do, I sell my drums, I buy some lights, I go, oh, this is maybe kind of a thing. And lighting my friends' bands at school and lighting school plays and this kind of stuff, and just sort of inching my way up in terms of production sophistication. I was doing the lighting at the Leicester Polytechnic at the little gig there, and this band came through, this band called the Smiths that nobody had ever heard of. It was a toss-up as to whether to introduce the members of the band to the audience or the members of the audience to the band. There weren't a lot of people there, and I met the band, and you know how you have this kind of sense of connection with people, and Johnny Marr and I just kind of clicked, and it was literally like brothers from a different mother, and we became fast friends. The Smiths had only just released their first single; they were just getting started, and Johnny and Morrissey were both very interested in presenting the Smiths in a way that was visually different and visually interesting. So we clicked, and again, this is opportunity coming knocking, and anybody that's young and interested in a career in performance and production, do everything, do every show you can. You never know where your opportunity is going to come. I was doing the show. I think Leicester Poly paid me £20 a night for doing the lighting there, and I think it probably cost me 40. So this was definitely a passion play, and I met the Smiths, and literally right after I met them, they released Hand in Glove, and then their career just took off like a rocket. And Johnny and I became and still are very, very dear friends. His kids and my kids grew up together. We can talk more about that because there's a big family thing going on there with Hans Zimmer as well. So that's how it started. And then from there, I kind of dropped into the Manchester music scene, and I was working with my friend Andy Little, helping him with New Order and Cabaret Voltaire. And then I met presenting the Smiths in a way that was a lot of that kind of early, mid-80s English music scene, the Fall, 808 State, all of these kind of bands from that part of the world. So I was sort of a lighting designer before I could even, as I want to say, I was a lighting designer before I could even spell it. But I was a lighting designer before I even really knew it was a thing. I just was very fortunate to kind of fall into it.
It's really interesting. It's almost as if you sort of paved the way into an art form that people didn't actually realize until the art was shown, and then you're just really, really naturally gifted and really good at this thing that makes such a massive impact to the audience.
Well, that's kind of you to say. I hope that is the case. You know, I think philosophically, and I'm sure it's exactly the same for you with the work you do at Zebra. I'm sure if people are noticing the speakers or noticing the screen or noticing the amp, to you it probably feels a little bit like you've missed the mark a little bit. It's the same for me. If people are really noticing the lights as a distinct thing, that's not what I want to do. I want it to feel like an experience. And certainly for the things that we do that are entertainment based, for me at least, it's all about being in service to the music. And that's the real hallmark of, I think, everything I've done that's entertainment based is trying to understand what the story is the performer's trying to tell, both micro and macro, both in terms of what's this song about, to how do you want people to feel when they leave? What's the big hook here? And I think certainly my job with venues that we do the scale of the Hans Zimmer Live, or the project we're doing in Vegas here, which we can talk about in a minute, or a few other things. Really, I view what I do as a communication methodology to help the person on the stage reach the furthest away person in the room. I spend a lot of time when I'm working, particularly on arena tours, in what one might call the cheap seats, because that's really what I believe is the primary audience for what I do, Atif. The people that are up close, they can build a visual relationship with the band. They're close to the musicians. They're often in a better place sonically. But for me, the shape, the show, the way it reaches out into the room, that's to communicate the people that are furthest away with the stage, not the people that are closest.
Wow, you've just explained the phenomenon which I've experienced. I've been very lucky to experience the live tour twice, and I know exactly some of the things that you're talking about, and that makes perfect sense. Um, so, I mean, let's come on to the Hans Zimmer live tour. So, from what I read, 600 days of design work in the making, and then
Yeah.
2 year delay into the concert. I mean, that's a phenomenal amount of design and time that goes into what was an absolute spectacular show. And the lighting, for me personally, it was just magical. I had no idea what to expect, and when I explain to people now why they have to go, I said, the music's incredible, but this is an audio-visual feast. It's a spectacle. You can only really appreciate what I'm talking about when you see the effects of you're getting a glimpse of what you do just behind you, but it is really extraordinary.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. Again, it's very much about following where the stone goes in the water, if that makes sense. So the stone goes in the water with Hans's music, and everything from there is ripples. The staging is a ripple. The video is a ripple. The lighting is a ripple. But if it's creating waves which are out of harmony with the ripple that's coming from Hans's music, then it's not helping and it's not serving. And you're right, it was a very long planning process for a couple of reasons. One thing that I really enjoy about working with Hans is not only is he truly as lovely, kind, and collaborative as he seems to be. But there are a number of performers we work with, I won't mention any names, who have a public and private persona. And being a globally recognized performer is not easy for anybody. Hans is how he appears. He is thoughtful, kind, lovely, collaborative, humble. But one of the things that he does, Atif, which is absolutely remarkable, is he's a consummate team builder in truly disruptive way. For Hans Zimmer Live, there was Derek McLean, who is a multi-Tony and Emmy award-winning theatrical designer. Derek hadn't done any other entertainment stuff. Peter Negrini, who worked on the content and the media, who came from a theatrical background as well. There was Barry Lather, who worked on the choreography and worked with the cast, who has sort of background a bit more like mine, a concert touring, themed environment background. There was me, who have been all over the place work-wise. A really diverse group of people, really interesting group of people, and people that bring different perspectives and opinions and feelings to this. So what that does is you get this real sense of energy and excitement and dynamic that are coming from different people with different backgrounds. It's exactly the same way he built the band. I know you've spoken to Pedro and Alexandra, but the band itself is everybody from the most classically trained, fundamental practice musicians like Tina Gill, for example, to Niall Maher, who is self-taught, improvisational in his technique, very fluid, both brilliant musicians, both from completely different backgrounds. Just in the percussion section with Holly and Aisha, two drummers who come from really different backgrounds. Not many people would do that. So that's why the 600 days of planning was a luxury. And really what we did was we looked at the process when it was apparent that we weren't going to be able to take the tour out in 2021. I think the first dates were. And we said, look, there's one of two things we could do here. We could either crumble and stick a pin in this and say, all right, we're just going to walk away. We're not going to continue to build and develop this. We're not going to continue to work on this. And then we'll pick things up again later. Or we can use this as a opportunity and find a very small sliver of silver lining in this very big coronavirus pandemic, and use this as an opportunity to do something which we can't always do, which is have the benefit of time and continue to work on the show. And I remember spending time at remote control in Hans's room with a song list that was about 6 hours of music that was kind of the short list. And Hans constantly asking Steve, how long can the show be? It's very rare to work with a performer that's saying, how can we do a shorter intermission? How early can we open the doors? How long of a show can we do? How can we cram as much of this amazing material into it? And then taking a long, hard look at each piece song by song, making really wise, we hoped, decisions about how we craft the arc of the show. I don't know if you recall, the first act has very little video in it. We really wanted to have a show that built, as you know, I've seen it twice, the show consciously started incredibly simply with Luar's amazing vocalization from Dune processing slowly across the stage to Stephen, and then the strong backlight of the second part of the Dune piece, and sort of really building the show in a very theatrical way. And a lot of that was Derek's influence, coming from the background of a true theater scenic designer. Derek was very instrumental in helping us craft a show that felt theatrical. And then from my standpoint, with the lighting, letting the lighting behave a little like a musical instrument that happened to make light almost as a second benefit, if that makes sense. And a lot of the physicality of the lighting system, the way that it moved Artif and the way that it breathed was a conscious decision to have something that would have scale and would literally move and ebb and flow in the same way as Hans's music does.
In fact, that's exactly what it does in the show. And from a layman's perspective, I don't know whether I'd like to know a little bit more about the dark arts. To me, it seems almost like a fireworks display that's completely in line with the performance. And I'm thinking, how does this work? Like, what is the process? Because I understand there's probably programming involved to do with the music, but it's a really dumb question. If the band decide not to play, do the lighting effects still start working, or how does it all? How on earth does it work? I don't get it.
It's a really good question. So from a programming standpoint, we quite literally second by second peel the songs apart. There's a carrier track which provides one thing that's interesting about the way Hans does his shows as an orchestral type show is there's no conductor. Hans and Nick wanted to break the mold of having a traditional conductor. The band's focused to the conductor rather than to the audience. So I'm sure you notice all the bands have in-ear monitors. So not only for their track, but they're also listening to an audio track, which is a click track. So it's essentially giving a metronome-like click, which is the equivalent of the conductor's baton. And there's a voice which is giving them audio cues. So it's like Niall's guitar, 3, 2, 1, go. Tina's cello solo, 3, 2, 1, go. So that's the glue that's holding it all together. So we use that as our baseline for programming. So even though the band's obviously playing, we have record tracks. So we have rehearsal tracks that we use when we're starting to work on the lighting that run on that line. Then we can start to break apart how we want the songs to work. And in much the same way as Nick and Hans sit down and write a score, I sit down with the rest of my team and write a score for the lighting and what we want the lighting to do. Then we use gaming engine technology, technique called pre-visualization, in a studio with the lighting console, using a visualization of this. And that becomes then our creative connective tissue. Then we have essentially a rendered video of what I think it's going to look like. It's like, okay, this is what we all talked about. This is what I think you said. Is this what you said? And then Hans goes through and gives notes, and Derek and Steve and Nick and the rest of the team can look at this. And then before we even arrive on the 2022 tour in Berlin for rehearsals, on the 23 tour in Oberhausen for rehearsals, everybody's kind of seen the show. So we've got a lot of it programmed. And what that lets us do is continue to sharpen the axe, because the bulk of the show is written by the time we get there. That's when we can work on this notion of good being the enemy of great and really go, oh, hang on a minute. Pedro's playing a piece there that we can use to lift the attention to that, or Alexandra's doing an amazing percussion piece, or Stephen's doing this really cool thing on the bells, and visually enhance that and draw the ear using the eye, if that makes sense. And then the other big part of this collaboratively is the amazing Colin Pink, who is Hans's astonishing live audio engineer, who brings an ability to steer the arc of the show in truly unique ways. Because what Colin's so great at, and if you haven't talked to Colin, I encourage you to do so, because he's a fascinating and lovely man, is Colin will kind of come over to us and go, hey, just so you know, there's this really interesting piece going on that you might want to think about drawing attention to. Or we'll say, we've picked up on this little thing, we've got a light cue, it could just use a little lift there. So we're constantly kind of molding and shaping the show to make sure that we're guiding the eye and the ear together and creating an immersive experience. Again, you know, there was a long time ago, another performer that I worked for said to me, John, you know, the audience don't go home humming the lights, which was, if the lighting has got out ahead, it's a great light, they don't go home humming the lights. If the lighting's got out ahead, and I'm sure we've all seen shows like this, which is where you're like, yeah, I didn't know the lights could do that. Do they have to do it all night? Where if the lighting or the video or the staging or the technology has got out ahead of the music, in many ways, I think you've lost. And I think it's interesting. I don't know how much you've seen about this crazy project in Vegas, this giant sphere that U2 are doing their show in, which I have mixed feelings about as a production venue, because it feels like it's got out of balance. And I haven't seen the show, so I need to reserve judgment beyond photos. But we've all seen shows where the technology eclipses the music, and for me, something's lost when that happens.
Yeah, I think perhaps the examples that come to mind are some of these sort of huge DJ productions where probably electronic dance music or something, where you see a massive hologram or some sort of thing going on. I think Take That probably did something similar with that huge robot man thing. And I think you're absolutely right. What I love about the live tour, it's almost as if someone's playing the lights. It's totally bizarre experience the band are playing, the music's going on, it's fantastic. And it's almost as if you've got someone like yourself backstage playing with this amazing keyboard, like something from Close Encounters or something.
Well, I mean, and a lot of that is true, and I'm very fortunate and proud that the person that's doing that is actually my daughter Haley. So Haley followed in my footsteps into the business. I've got two daughters, both of them are in the entertainment production business, despite my best efforts to encourage them to get a real job. So I designed the tour. Haley takes it on the road, and Haley is running it every night. And I was talking before about this family connection. Hans is a big family man. He loves the notion of the sort of the multi-generational approach. So there's a lovely symmetry for us that my career started with the Smiths. Johnny Marr played on a ton of Hans's recorded music. Johnny's son Niall plays in the band. Niall grew up with my daughter Haley. You know, we spend Christmases together, we vacation together. They literally grew up together, and now the two of them are on the road, sort of doing their thing, sort of following the footsteps of their fathers. And, you know, and Johnny came to the Manchester gig, and we had a suitably emotional, weepy dad-to-dad moment of like, look at your boy, look at your girl kind of stuff. So it was rather lovely. But yeah, there is somebody there keeping the show on track. And one of the things about a show like Hans is it's real musicians. It's real musicians really playing. So whilst obviously there's a pretty tight roadmap, there's still opportunity for things to meander, and frankly, in a performance of that complexity, also for things to go wrong. So it's not a press button at the beginning of the show and it all happens by magic. You know, you're right. You know, just as Colin is mixing the live audio, Haley is there mixing the live lighting.
What an incredible job! So, you know, congratulations to her, and to do it day in, day out on a really intense tour for that amount of time. What a credit to her. Amazing training, amazing insight, and we as an audience just get to have the best time. In terms of events over the next coming months, you mentioned Las Vegas. What are the sort of things that we can really go out and enjoy in terms of what you're up to?
Yeah, I think I think we stand at a really interesting place in the live production world. I mentioned before the Sphere, this big sort of LED globe, which is sitting over there, where I am in Las Vegas, which I think is sort of really pushed things in a direction of technology. And U2, a band I've long respected, and Willie Williams, who's U2's production designer and a friend of mine, I think is a genius. And I've always loved that U2 are doing things which are bold and brave and daring, all the way back to Joshua Tree and Zoo TV and all of these kind of things where they've really pushed the boundaries. And I think that's important. Hans does that as well. He's constantly pushing. And that's where interesting things happen. It all happens at the edges. We're currently working on an really interesting project called Voltaire. Voltaire is a new intimate space at the Venetian Theatre, at the Venetian Resort rather, in a theatre. And it's sort of, in some ways, the anti-sphere. It is really intimate. It is a reinterpretation of the notion of an evening spent in a sort of cabaret type review. So there is Voltaire, which is the room. There is Belle de Nuit, who's this amazing French. I don't know how to describe them. My daughter Haley, who's working on the project with me, describes them as the crazy French sex disco. But it is sort of burlesque meets cirque meets cabaret meets dance meets performance. All of these things together in an amazing show, which has been created by Marc and Manon, who are two genius French creatives. So that's kind of like the connective tissue. The show opens with Kylie Minogue. So it's an opportunity to see Kylie not in an arena, but in a theater that holds 1,200 people in a really intimate setting in an interesting show that is designed to curate an experience through the evening. Derek McLean, who we collaborated on Hans, brought us to the table for this project. And Atif, it's really interesting that it is a notion of how to tell a distinct story that has all these peaks and valleys, with the performances from Belle de Nuit earlier in the evening, and then Kylie's performance, and there's another range of headliners coming into the room that will be subsequently announced. But to me, it's a really amazing exercise in how intimate can we make something feel. And I think that's really interesting in a post-COVID world, is not only how do we do giant things like the Sphere or like Hans's show, but how can we also do the small and the beautiful and the bespoke. So that's coming up in December. My dear friend Johnny Marr is doing a couple of shows in Manchester with an orchestra, and doing a sort of retrospective of his solo career, and everything from some Smith's music, some electronic music, his solo music performed in a new venue in Manchester, confusingly for Manchester, called Factory, but no connection with Factory Records. So it's a new multi-purpose performance space in Manchester, which is absolutely brilliant and just what the city needs. There's a large theatre in there. There's a big multi-purpose space where we're doing Johnny's show. So that is the 7th and 8th of December, and I think tickets are still available. But Johnny playing with his band and an orchestra of some of the finest musicians from around the north of England, in a celebration of the Northern Powerhouse in a really physical, tactile way, not just that we're going to build HS2 or not kind of way. So that's coming up. The other thing that we do over here, which is really interesting, and there's a number of these shows in the UK as well, is these kind of celebration of the intersection of humanity and nature at the holidays. Big walking garden experiences that celebrate nature, that celebrate being together at the holidays and family, and not even really Christmas shows, but holiday shows, and deeply inclusive. We sort of kicked these shows off 12 years ago with a project at the Morton Arboretum in Chicago, which is basically a tree museum. And there's this fabulous 1,700-acre enclave of nature and wonder in the west suburbs of Chicago. And we were working last year on the installation, and it's a public garden, so it's open while we're installing the show. And we've tried to curate holiday music from around the world, because music is a big part of the holidays, no matter what culture you come from. And there was a piece which the Asian American cultural group had helped us find, which I don't know what Asian people listen to at the holidays, but they helped us find this piece of music, and we're playing this music, and this lovely Asian couple came up to me, and the wife said, why are you playing this music? And I'm like, we're setting up. This is the music we're going to use for part of the show. And she's like, this is the music from holidays when I was a child. I'm like, is it okay? Is it right? She's like, it's perfect. But I never hear this as part of holiday celebrations. It's always Hark the Herald Angels and, the sort of more traditional holiday music. So we've pulled together music from the Hispanic culture, music from the Asian culture, music from the African subcontinent, music from different European cultures, to create, again, a celebration of everything that brings us together, not drives us apart. And at the moment, I think when there's so much fracture and disagreement on your side of the Atlantic and my side of the Atlantic, I think when we can come together and celebrate things with music, I think that's really amazing, and that's aspirational. So that's what we're going to continue to do, my friend, is create these opportunities for people to come together and focus on what makes us the same, not what makes us different.
Absolutely incredible! What an amazing intention, and for all the audience, encourage everyone to go out and enjoy these experiences. One thing that I was going to ask you before, when the stage behind you, as you can see the angles of the lights and things, it almost seems like you have a whole bunch of sort of architects and people who the staging is incredible, because even the angles of the laser lighting, all of this is really, really crucial in telling that storytelling. And because it's so visual, even if it's off by a few degrees, when that translates to the back of the stadium, people would sort of notice something like that. But I've been to two of the concerts. It just seems pinpoint perfect.
Yeah, one of the things about that is planning. It's also my math teachers from school, I'm sure, are going, see, told you you would use that maths. You should too. When we were shouting at you for not paying attention in maths, and you know, and you were going, oh, when am I going to use trigonometry? When am I ever going to use geometry? The answer is right there. But it is meticulous planning. It is building things in 3D. It is, you know, and this is why I think it's an exciting time in production and in all avenues of production, because what I'm seeing is the ability to bring in people that haven't been in the traditional production world is yeah, I can design the thing behind me. Derek and I design the thing behind us, but there's structural engineers and event architects and all of these people that help make it actually happen. Logistics people, you know, how many trucks does it take? How do we get it from city to city? You know, how does it come down at night in London and then go up the next day in Manchester? Because it does, and it did. You know, we did the O2 one night in London, and then the Manchester Arena the next night. That's not an undertaking for the faint of heart. So not only is it a testament to one of the hardest working crews I've ever worked with, but also to that kind of planning. I mentioned before a lot of the gaming technology we're using. That's bringing people into the entertainment production world who might not have traditionally seen a career there. So much of what we do is based on applied physics. So a lot of the people that are coming to work with us have an engineering and a physics background. So what I love about that is much in the same way as I was talking about the team that Hans puts together. There's room for everybody. You know, that if there's anybody that's, you know, at school that's listening to this and it's like, yeah, I'd really like to get involved with production, but I'm a physics nerd, or I'm a math nerd, or I'm really interested in graphic design. That doesn't mean that you can't work in musical production. It actually means we need your help, because those are the people that are naturally drawn to it. We've got a lot of people who have a background like mine who are frustrated musicians. What we're constantly looking for is people that can bring applied sciences to what we do. And I'm sure it's exactly the same for you with the work you do at Zebra. It's the intersection of science, technology, and art, and finding the balance point between those. And I'm sure it's exactly the same when you're helping somebody find what they need for their dream home theater. Is, again, it's all about this notion of balance. If the lighting and the staging, the music aren't in balance, the show's not right. If the science, technology, and art aren't right in your home theater, it doesn't work. So all of those things have to come together and stay balanced. So yeah, even though that looks like curated chaos behind me, we know where every one of those beams is going and what it's doing. We also want to make sure it's not banging into somebody's face all evening, because you've been looking forward to the show for months, spend hundreds of pounds on your ticket, and then all you are is blinded by a light all night. Those kind of things are factors in the arc of the experience as well. But it is all about planning.
Wow. I mean, it's just incredible to bring artisans from completely different backgrounds with a common purpose, which is the enhancement and experience of, you know, human experiences, and you know, spreading that positivity. It's just phenomenal. And I mean, it looks like, you know, the Lightswitch Academy is emerging, you know, to bring all these young talent around the world. If you've got a talent, we want you, and we want you to,
100%.
you know, and it's great.
And honestly, yeah, those people are representative of our audience, as well, Atif. That it's not our audience is not full of lighting designers. Our audience is not full of production designers. It's teachers and general practitioners and nurses and bus drivers and office workers and all of this. So the more voices we can bring to creating the experience, the more people we're going to touch. You know, we want everybody that comes to Hans's show, Kylie's show, Johnny's show in December, that goes to see our Disney 100 thing in London, any of these kind of things, to feel like, hey, this touched me. This was designed with me in mind. I feel like I belong. You know, I think for so many of us who gravitated to music or gravitated to theater, especially at school, and I know from talking to so many people, there's a commonality of finding where you belonged because of music and performing arts. I think we have a responsibility as those people that found our lost tribe to welcome other people as well, be as inclusive and welcoming to our audiences as we possibly can. Because even though Steve and Hans signed my check and it says RCP, I'm in no illusion who I really work for. I was, the night when you were there, I was working for you. You know, the night when we're in Manchester, I'm working for 16,000 people who come to see the show in Manchester. When I'm in London, I'm working for 20,000 people who are in the O2. When we do the show with Kylie, I'm working for the 1,100 people who came to see Kylie that night. That's my audience. And I think it is at our peril as an industry when the production arts lose sight of who our audience really, who our client really is. Our client is very much the audience.
That's exactly what, as an audience participant, it's exactly how I felt, and I'm sure people listening to this have felt if they've had the honor of attending the tour. And if not, book your tickets now because it's one hell of a show.
Yes, yeah, we hope to be back soon. You know, I mean, people have another opportunity to hear Hans's music. You know, as you know, there are two variants of the Hans Zimmer experience. There's Hans Zimmer Live, which is Hans and his band, and the one behind me, and then there's the World of Hans Zimmer, which is Hans's opportunity to connect to his audiences in a slightly less direct way, as Hans constantly reminds those of us that are just focused on the live experience. He's like, you know, I have a day job. You know, I actually have directors calling me going, where's my soundtrack? There's a deadline. The movie is going to be released. We would really like it to have some music. So I mean, Hans has a duality to his career. And even though he does love playing live and adores his audiences, and really, I think is incredibly passionate about that. He needs to find the balance. So I think the World of Hans Zimmer is a really interesting approach. It's kind of in some ways like his own tribute show, but it lets him keep the music in front of people. And Hans Zimmer Live will be back. There are plans being hatched. So and I think we've got some new and exciting developments coming to help people see the show and experience the show in different ways as well.
And of course, hopefully the new Blu-ray or the 4K Ultra HD release, I hear, is imminent. I mean, we've been enjoying the Live in Prague Blu-ray for quite a few years. It's one of the industry's go-to demo discs to demonstrate the home cinema, media rooms. Everyone uses that disc, so everyone is really looking forward to something like that. Everyone, it's just going to be incredible.
It has not escaped many people's attention that when we did the shows in Dubai, there were an awful lot of cameras there. Many people have stated that, and that was indeed a true fact. So let's leave that there. But there is something that's going to make Hans's fans very happy in the offing, and yeah, Hans is a perfectionist. So there's a lot of work going into delivering on people's wishes, shall we say?
Obviously, one of the biggest things that people always mention all over the place, AI, augmented reality, and all these types of technologies. How do you see those things influencing your work in particular over the next few years?
Boy, what a great question. You know, I think I would have had a different answer to this, Atif, before the pandemic. Many things I learned in the pandemic. About art and creativity and human resilience, and certainly you were on the front line of this as well. So thank you so much for your service in that regard. I think what I learned fundamentally as it applies to live experiences is how much we enjoy sharing things with other people. So the notion of us all disappearing into our Ready Player One worlds with VR headsets on and AR headsets on, I think is perhaps not as much of an existential threat or opportunity, depending on how you view it, as I might have thought before the pandemic. You know, there was a really interesting study that was done by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where what they did was they took groups of 5 students that were all friends. They took one of the students out of the group. They had the one student sit on their own in a room and watch a really interesting documentary. They asked that student what they liked, then they played to the home crowd, showed that student on their own a documentary that was really focused on their sweet spot, super interesting to them. They took the other four and played them basically nonsense, infomercials, all kinds of rubbish TV stuff. And then afterwards, asked them to grade on a subjective scale their level of enjoyment. Mm-hmm. Without exception, the group of four had a better time than the person that was on their own. So I think there's something that's hardwired into the human spirit about shared experiences and shared mm-hmm. storytelling. And another way to describe this is a very good friend of mine. A couple of years ago was on safari. He was finishing a project in Africa and he went on safari. He's another lighting designer. And they're sitting around the campfire with their local guides and what do you do? What do you do? And he said, I'm a lighting designer. And they were like, there's no equivalency. They didn't know what he was talking about. And then he tried to explain theater and they were sort of getting it. And then he said, I help people tell stories. And they were like, oh, okay, great. You know, it sort of brought that commonality together. So I think VR and AR are very interesting technologies for solo pursuits, for gaming, for those kind of immersive technologies. I think there's a huge educational opportunity with remote learning and those kind of things that hasn't really been tapped into with those technologies. I think both remote learning and remote medicine have huge potential for those kind of technologies, especially for people who do live truly remotely. But do I think in the foreseeable future that technology is a threat to or a replacement for gathering in a room full of people to share something wonderful with them? I don't think so. I think again, back to the sphere, I think what's going on with the sphere is interesting in terms of using that kind of technology for a shared experience. But even as good as the new Apple VR headset is, I just don't think it's going to replace that shared experience. And I think coming out of the pandemic, this kind of incredible explosion of kind of like revenge entertainment, as some people in the industry call it, then this incredible pent-up demand that was really started coming out of pandemic, I think that demonstrated how much we yearn for that shared experience. A lot of people were going, you know, we're going to put the show on sale. Are people going to come back, or are they just going to stay at home? And I'm sure one of the things that was great for you was being able to help people have amazing entertainment experiences in their home. And I think, you know, that I'm sure Zebra was really like a lifeline for people. They're like, oh, thank God we've got this ability to do this in our home where we can't go to the theater and can't go to a concert and can't go to the movies. But I think it becomes an adjunct in the same way as everybody thought that video technology was going to be the death of the cinema. And in many ways, I think it's given people more opportunities to experience that art form. And it's just different kind of ways of consuming your content. You know, I went to see The Creator, the new science fiction film, Hans Music. There's no way no disrespect meant to somebody that does home cinema. There's no way I was going to watch that at home. And I have a pretty decent home cinema. There's something about going to an IMAX and seeing it on a big screen. Conversely, there's some stuff that is just amazing being at home with my family and watching it in our home theater. I think VR AR is going to do the same thing. It will be a different flavor of consuming technology. I think we're fundamentally wired to enjoy variety. So I think people will go, oh, this experience works really well for this. You know, I'm going to play a deeply immersive video game. I'm going to feel like I'm walking through the Louvre and have an amazing experience. I'm going to meet my doctor using remote technology, you know, all of those kind of things, which are new ways of doing it. Generally, a new piece of technology in human history has not replaced another piece of technology. It's become an adjunct. So I think it's opportunities for the entertainment production industry to look at it and go, not what does this replace, but what does this enhance? And how can we create differentiated experiences that lean into that technology and use what that technology does best, not figure out how it replaces something that's already pretty good.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, you know, next Bond film release, dressing up in your tux and going with your friends.
Uh-huh.
The new Dune release has to be celebrated on the biggest screen you possibly can.
100%.
Maverick, if you didn't watch it at the cinema, you haven't watched it, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, total
No,
agreement.
you're absolutely right. And one thing I would say is, in the current era of people using, chat for work or AI or to any extent, for me it'd be a travesty knowing that something that's produced on stage, similar to what you see in the live show, um, if there's no soul behind it, I think people will be able to tell. And for me, it's so
You can tell,
refreshing
right? Yeah.
that when you see and experience the show, that this is the heart and soul and love of people that's culminating in this extraordinary experience. And to me, that's the difference between technology trying to do these things as best as it can and the people who developed this thing in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly in terms of AI, I think you've hit the nail on the head absolutely perfectly. And it can only aggregate what it's doing from existing works. AI would not have put bagpipes in Dune. That took the same kind of crazy genius from Hans to do that. And I think it's interesting that certainly the sort of the anecdotal story is that the first go round of the soundtrack from the creator, they tried to do, said to AI, go do Hans Zimmer, but there's a not small amount of bold experimental craziness to that which Hans does, which you just can't capture. So I think, does AI have its place? It does have its place, but again, I think it's best if we think of it as a tool, not as a replacement for something, and it still needs creative input to sort of ring fence it. And like you said, I think you're absolutely right. You're always going to be able to tell. I think we can feel the soul in art, whether it's painting or poetry or dance or sculpture or music or movies. You can feel the soul, and you can, just as we've all been to see movies and plays and read things that have had too many cooks in the kitchen, and it's lost that singularity of vision and that singularity of purpose.
And to end on that, I would say, when we go around the earth and see the most extraordinary, beautiful architecture and buildings and things through centuries, and the greatest wonders of the world, in a very similar vein, when we come to the concert, when I leave, I'm thinking, who on earth was responsible for what I've just experienced, and the journey to have conversations like this. It's immeasurable, and really, really deeply respect and celebrate what you do and what you do for the audience. So thank you so much for your time. And we look forward to enjoying everything that you do, that you put your hands to, and all the collaborations that you do and with your family. And we can't wait till next year.
Well, thank you for having me on the podcast, and keep coming, because we do it for you. That emotional souvenir that you carry away is why we do it. So thank you for coming, and thank you for having me on the podcast. It's been great chatting to you.
Thank you very much indeed. All the best.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.